guess what? It's silly season. That is what the staff of one municipality that I used to work in used to call election season. It's the time when the temporary staff are replaced with new temporary staff. And the bureaucratic people get to put up with a whole new crop. No matter where you live, you will be facing elections at some point. And very often, a provincial or state election will produce people who will be controlling the wallet that funds programs at the municipal level. So it's important to know where their thoughts are about several different issues. Where I live, we have elections coming up in early June, and that would be the provincial election, and then the municipal election is at the end of October. So I'm getting my questions ready, and I thought I would share them with you so that you can see what you think. Maybe you have some ideas to contribute. Maybe these questions will give you ideas of questions to put forward to your local candidates. So for starters, in rural areas, they're treated very differently than urban areas. The politicians tend to live in urban areas, and for them, that's the center of the universe. So they don't think too much about how we live in rural areas. Rural areas, as a for instance, tend to lack public transit, which kind of doesn't matter when we are younger and we're driving cars. But for those of us who have disabilities, or who will age into not being able to drive, public transit becomes a very crucial piece for us in terms of supporting our independence. It affects our ability to get to work for those of us who work or volunteer, to get to healthcare appointments, to do our grocery shopping, to get prescription filled, to access social and recreational amenities. So all of this is very important. One of these days, if you have a car, you won't have the ability to drive that car. Guaranteed. Very, very few people will pass away before their license is removed from them, or before you give it up voluntarily. I'd prefer to think it's that you give it up voluntarily, that you just know when it's time. But part of knowing when it's time is understanding how you can still do life. And that's an important thing. Transit systems take years to put in place. And it can be as simple as a little bus that runs around your town. It still takes time to figure it all out. So if you don't have public transit, start now. Who, amongst the candidates, is supportive of public transit? And not just supportive of it, but willing to do something about it. I mean, we can all say we like jelly beans. That doesn't mean that we're going to go out and buy jelly beans. So being supportive of public transit is one thing. Putting a plan into action and making it happen, quite a different matter. So who's willing to do that? Over 90% of us want to and will stay in our own homes in the communities we love. However, as we have previously discussed on this show, basic house design hasn't changed since the 90s, and so many of us are living in homes that don't work with us. They work against us, potentially causing injury. From tripping and falling to range of motion to an inability to climb stairs. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, it costs the government very much less money to fund home modification than it does to support someone in a long-term or nursing home facility, which frankly, there aren't enough of anyway. So if we've got people needing to stay in their own homes because they can't go anywhere else, that means they need home care. I don't know about where you live, but home care where I live, very unreliable. Very unreliable. The home care workers are not paid nearly enough. The jobs are not valued the way that they should be. And there aren't enough people stepping in to take these jobs. So, also in a rural area, weather can play a part. We have winters, we can have some pretty bad winters. So if you're due to have home care on a given day and the weather is bad, you might not get it. Think if you're somebody who is bedridden or wants to have a shower. We think nothing of a shower. But for someone who needs assistance, they might not get one. So, the concept of funding home modifications is not a luxury. It's actually a necessity. So, it is better than warehousing seniors in long-term care. Let me just say it. It's true. Our seniors are in fact warehoused, and there aren't enough rooms. They're not being built quickly enough, and quite frankly, they don't really want to build a huge number of long-term care facilities. When you think about it and you look at the population increase, at some point, that population of older adults who need those rooms and beds starts to drop off. And then they will be left with buildings that have no use. We've already experienced that with schools. They're being very cautious from an economic perspective about what they build and where they build it. So again, in rural areas, it's more likely to be the case that you will stay in your own home, but we need better support in order to be able to do that. So who amongst your candidates is supportive of funding home modifications to the level that they are needed? Good question to ask. Many people would be very happy to downsize into a granny flat or a tiny home or a garage conversion, something that allows them to continue living independently, but make sure that care is nearby. Many municipalities do allow that kind of housing, but many don't. So where I live, it is approved at the county level, and then the municipality adopts it. It might be different where you live, but you need to make sure that the candidates who are running are supportive of this kind of secondary housing usage for properties. All right, there we go. Now then, many municipalities have worn out infrastructure in terms of sidewalks, as a for instance. Where there are multiple seasons, the sidewalks heave and they crack. It produces trip hazards. Over the years, tree-lined streets have become bare as roads have become wider. Old trees have been taken down. There's no shade for people to rest in. And I'll point you back a few minutes to when we were talking about heat stroke. That would be in our last episode. Heat stroke is a very, very critical situation. And yes, you can get it by just walking up a street where there's no shade. So you need to be aware of that. The lack of benches coupled with the lack of shade is not a good situation for people who have disabilities or people who are older and need a minute to rest as they go about their day. They are trying to live independently. We need to support them in that. So which candidates see these deficiencies at a municipal level and are willing to support fixing them? Another good question. Health and wellness in an overall sense is a huge topic for discussion everywhere. And the ability for each of us to be able to access programs that support our health and wellness becomes more and more important with each passing day. People who have diabetes, people who are overweight, people who have range of motion issues, people who want to stay healthy and get in their number of minutes of physical activity, that whole range of people can make use of recreational programs. Now, recreation not necessarily something that a lot of politicians are knowledgeable about or good at. In fact, I have to say I'm not even sure it belongs within the municipality's competencies. And yet, where I live in Ontario, it is within the range of the municipal competency package. So they kind of have to deal with it. But for many of them, it means building a building and then waiting to see who rents the space to offer programs. And sometimes that just means local hockey. In the summertime, it can be soccer and baseball. That's fine for younger kids, and they should be offered. But what about older adults? What about people who need range of motion? What about people who could do with aquafit exercises because it's easier on joints? What about people who need the kinds of therapies that would otherwise see them driving out of their town, half an hour or an hour away to access? Very few municipalities actually have the funds to provide these programs right now, but they can do a better job of looking for partnerships. So, which candidates are actually interested in the health and wellness of their communities? Another good question to ask. Let me know what questions you have for your candidates, no matter what level of government they're at. They might be questions we could all be sharing and asking our candidates. Until next week, be healthy, be well, and be good to yourselves. Bye.